Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Meerkat Musings. Welcome back to the first Formula One video in a little while. And I will confess that I haven't really been in the mood to discuss Formula One for some time. Reason being is, we've had, for 2.5 years now, we've had what's more or less been the Max Verstappen Magic Roundabout. Credit to Max and to Red Bull for nailing these new regulations at the start of 2022, and take nothing away from what they've achieved over the span of the last couple of seasons, but it can make for bleak viewing if you're wanting someone else to have a crack at the title. I will sort of wear my heart on my sleeve in that regard, and I will say that I am a Lewis Hamilton fan. I'm originally from the same town as Lewis Hamilton, which is my small claim to fame. Never met the guy. We moved in completely different circles, so I'm not going to try and claim I'm personally familiar with him, because I'm not. But my small claim to fame is we both grew up in Stevenage. I think his reflections upon his time in that town are different to mine, but nonetheless, because he was a Stevenage lad, I followed his career when he got into Formula One with some interest. Of course I did. It was rather sort of unique to see someone from that little suburban town break into such a high profile sort of sport and do so in such a high profile way as well. And so, I watched as he went agonisingly close to winning the title in his rookie year in 2007. I saw him win his first title in 2008. I saw him go through something of a title wilderness from that point forward, with flashes of what he could do when the machinery sort of came together for him. And then, of course, we had that kind of what at the time seemed like it would be a poor decision to go from McLaren to Mercedes in 2013. And I was among, I think, a number of people who had doubts that this was the right thing to do. And of course, you flash forward to the end of 2020, and by that point, Hamilton has become a 7-time world champion, with, of course, obviously 6 of those titles being with Mercedes, and a spell of dominance that has only ever really been seen once before, when Michael Schumacher won 5 titles on the bounce with Ferrari. And people will say it's down to the car, and it's not really a mark of Hamilton's skill or ability. Do you know what? Yes, I understand that argument. The thing is, you can make the argument about every single driver to ever win the World Championship. If it's largely about the car, then the achievements of the likes of Schumacher, Ayrton Senna, and Alain Prost, all of them really become sort of secondary. You can use that argument to kind of degrade and demean the accomplishments of any and every world champion. If they're only winning with the best car, which most of the time is the case, then is anyone actually great in Formula One? Does the sport have, people who deserve to be classed as legends if it's entirely down to the machinery? And the thing is, of course, it's not entirely down to the machinery. It never has been. The human element is absolutely vital. There's a reason why teams covet certain drivers, because they will see a certain element of racecraft with them. They'll have drivers who they know can nail the setup when it's necessary. They'll see that some drivers can really push the car to its very limits, to the very edge of what it can do, and they can keep it in that window and in that pocket for longer. They'll see drivers who can look after the tyres and the brakes better than others and maximise the most out of any and every stint on track. And that's why we have drivers who are regarded as being legends. That's why some drivers are regarded as better than others. That's why, alongside factors such as a hunger to win and a commitment and a determination to be the best, we have the legends of Formula One. And it's why Lewis Hamilton, in my view, absolutely deserves to live in that category. I'm not going to say he's the greatest of all time. I think he deserves to be in that discussion, beyond all shadow of a doubt. He is, statistically speaking, the most successful driver of all time, and that's an undeniable fact. He is joint on titles, of course, with Michael Schumacher on 7 titles. He has more wins than any other driver, more pole positions as well. And yes, I understand that he's done that with what's been the best car for the most part over the course of time. But equally, it's not like he hasn't had to fight for some of his titles. And it's also, you've got to understand, it's equally impressive that he has retained a hunger and a desire to keep going and keep fighting. He could have got to 4 world titles and said, I've had enough. He could have stopped at 5. He had nothing to prove by that point, anyone really, except perhaps himself. But he wanted to keep going. He wanted to get to that milestone, and he did. And it was only by perhaps the narrowest of cruel margins and a controversial twist of fate in 2021 that he didn't get title number 8. From that point forward, however, as I say, we've had the Max Verstappen Magic Roundabout, and the same argument in some respects about the best car can be made about Max Verstappen, because the Red Bull has been comfortably the best car on the grid for the past couple of years. And it's, in my view, it's certainly still there or thereabouts in 2024, but other teams have significantly closed the gap, especially from the start of the season. And whilst my gut tells me the Red Bull is still the best car on the grid, other cars are a lot closer. And all of a sudden, what's interesting is Max isn't winning so often when faced with stiffer competition. But I'll tell you who has won for the first time in 2.5 years: Lewis Hamilton. He had a bit of luck at Silverstone yesterday. He had a bit of luck with McLaren messing up pit stops and with George Russell retiring. But equally, he put himself into the pocket to be competitive, and to be truly competitive for the first time in some time. He was every bit as quick as George Russell in the opening part of the race. And, at one point, Russell and the McLarens of Norris and Piastri were actually dropping Max Verstappen in dry conditions, no less, in a fairly comfortable fashion. And in variable conditions, when you had that rain and you had that kind of wet, dry kind of saga going on, Hamilton kept a cool head. He showed his experience, and in the end, he got his reward. He claimed a record 9th win at Silverstone. That's 9 times he's won his home Grand Prix, and it was the 104th win of his incredible career. And you could see what it meant to him. You could see what it meant to the fans. I mean, the cheer which went up, the eruption of joy when he crossed that finish line was incredible. To be fair, I mean, every time that he made a move on someone, even when he made a move on other British drivers, I mean, I think there was a quite the roar when Hamilton got by Russell at one point. And I think it shows that, as much as I think the British fans would be happy with any British driver winning, the one they wanted to see on the top step of the podium, the one they really wanted to see win, was Lewis Hamilton. And in the end, he took the win that he absolutely, in my view, deserved. It was a great result for him, and you could see what it meant to him. The emotion was plain to see on his face, and you could hear it in his voice, and it might well galvanise him from this point forward. He will be the first to admit that he's had a few doubts here and there in the wake of this sort of barren run. And, it's frustrated him. Of course it has. He's used to winning. He has that kind of absolute drive and determination to win. You can't overcome the limits of the machinery in Formula One. If the car isn't quick enough, then very, very, very rarely do you see a driver take a car well beyond its kind of normal standing, so to speak. I mean, you can be the best driver in the world, you are never going to win a race in, say, an Alpine, and certainly not in, say, like a Sauber, because the cars simply fundamentally aren't good enough for that to happen. So, it's been a difficult couple of years for Hamilton where the car hasn't quite been right for him, but everything came together for a deserved victory on home turf that I was really happy for him. I really was. And I think most British motorsport fans will be very happy for him as well. From there, who knows? I mean, Hamilton has decided to leave Mercedes, which is, a widely publicised move, and in 2025 he will be a Ferrari driver, which, I, for one, I imagine he might be thinking to himself, especially in the wake of how Mercedes have picked things up and Ferrari really haven't, he might be wondering, is there a chance I can kind of undo that contract? Because Ferrari, yes, they are historically a huge name, and yes, they have delivered some incredible success in motorsport, but they do seem to be horrifically inconsistent. That's sort of undeniable at the moment. And if I were Hamilton, I would be thinking, how can I get out of this? But it's a done deal. It's a signed contract, and I don't think that Hamilton can back out of that now. So we'll have to see, come what may in 2025. And going forward, of course, it's about 2026. New regulations are coming in, and also Ferrari are sniffing around Adrian Newey, who's leaving Red Bull. Newey being an absolute mastermind of car design. So if Ferrari do get him and they give him a blank check with which to design a car, then come 2026 they could deliver Lewis Hamilton a very, very good racing car. It's impossible to tell, of course, isn't it? I mean, there's no certainty that will happen. Newey, is at a Red Bull team who right now are actually, they've kind of struggled a little bit in some respects. They've had a few tracks which haven't suited the car, and they've found other teams snapping at their heels far more than they would like. So, Newey's not an all-seeing sort of car design god. He's not guaranteed to produce a game-changing car by any means. But you certainly get the impression that Ferrari will give him, or if they're being smart, they should give him all the resources that he wants and needs to design a car that's good for the 2026 regulations. And that car could yet power Lewis Hamilton to that record-breaking 8th title that he so desperately hungers for. And now that he's won this race, now that he's taken his 104th win and extended his record, you kind of think, wow, perhaps he can get that kind of confidence back. He'll feel galvanised. He'll feel energised by this, and maybe it will push him on to new heights. Who knows? With this kind of thing, all you can do is wait and see and just go from there, really. But I, for one, I would love to see him get that 8th title. I'd love to see him set that new standard for title success in Formula One, to be the new benchmark, as it were. I mean, of course, in many respects, he already is the benchmark, but the one thing that he isn't the outright top of is titles in Formula One, and I know he wants to go that extra mile and claim that all-important 8th title. It could yet happen. or he might not win a race again. You know, it's Formula One. Rules change, regulations change, teams ebb and flow. You don't know what's around the corner. So I think first and foremost, he's really got to enjoy the moment. And I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's drinking in everything that happened yesterday. The whole weekend went really, really well for him. And from, one Stevenage lad to another, I wish him all the absolute very best. I hope that he goes on from here and he finds a way to keep winning. And I hope when he goes to Ferrari that he can take that experience and carry on winning. Good luck, Lewis.